That was so slow last night, Batpool. That's what happens when The Walking Dead has 90 minutes. They tend to use all 90 minutes to go nowhere fast. Hello to our friends in El Salvador. I'm just retweeting so that people find us. And there's a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about. Season 6 is over. No more season 6 of The Walking Dead. Who do you think died? That is the $1,000,000 question. That is the question that The Walking Dead desperately wants us to keep asking for however many months. I see Batpool asks Glenn, one Hannah, Abraham. I see another Glenn. I see another Daryl is the next right. 7 months. Yes, everybody. I think Glenn. So that doesn't mean I'm right. It just means that they've been building. You think it was Rosita? Hi Knoxville. Why do I think Glenn? Okay, so and our friends who just finished in the UK. I try to time this so that whenever the show ends in the UK, we can jump right on and we can all talk about it together. So those of us in the US who watched this last night, be aware that our friends in the UK have not had a chance to think this over and are joining us now with fresh eyes. So they're all probably angry, like we were angry last night, most of us. The Talking Dead on now. Hello to Georgia. Hello to everyone joining all over. Watched it in the UK. Okay, so if you have not seen The Walking Dead season 6 finale, don't watch this because we're talking about it. Uh, yeah, beloved character. It does imply Glenn. So anyway, I don't think it's a big. Sorry. I don't think that it's a big spoiler at this point that in the comics, Glenn doesn't last that long, right? I mean, he's lasted a while, but the comics were, or this happened in the comics a way long time ago, and now we're finally getting caught up to it in the U.S. In the U.S. On TV, I mean. And you're right. They don't follow the comics, but they certainly take a lot of inspiration from the comics, loosely, right? And so if you follow the comics, it seems likely that Glenn has died, but also if you follow the comics, it seems very likely that Abraham has died because Abraham has not lasted this long in the comics. So now he's a wild card. He could go at any time, and we have nothing to base it on. There's no precedent. And the same thing with Daryl. I'm surprised I haven't seen a lot of mention of Daryl because Daryl is a character that was invented for the TV series, and so nobody has an idea of when he will die. So yeah, and I like that. Sophia, none of the actors know who died. They'll find out when they start filming. They'll find out whenever they get told not to come into work. So I've heard that theory that the creators of the show actually don't know who it is yet and they're going to decide later. But I don't think that's the case because I'm pretty sure that they shot it with a specific death in mind. And so I think that I'm going to say my money's on Glenn, but Daryl, Abraham, could be them. Could be them. Either one is likely. Yeah, and Abraham's last words to Eugene. I think that's a good point because Eugene was fully ready to go. Like he was ready to check out, and they had that moment together. So if Eugene ends up dying, or if his best buddy Abraham dies, it seems like a good end. Yeah, Chandler Riggs says he doesn't know, but the thing is, they don't reveal a lot of these things to the cast members that don't need to know. So even if Chandler Riggs says he doesn't know, that doesn't mean that nobody knows. It just means that he doesn't know. Maybe the most likely the character who was actually killed, that actor does in fact know. But of course they can't say anything. until October, because we are waiting now until October to figure out what's going on here. So I'm just going to restream this, and I would appreciate if anyone could restream this. That would be fantastic. Let's get it all out. Let's get it all out right now, and let's figure it out. Sorry. Yeah, there was a heartfelt moment with Sasha. Abraham has basically been ready to die for a while now. I thought that he was going to die when Denise died, and he didn't. They surprised us all. And so, here's another thought, right? So we know that somebody dies. Could multiple people die? Is it Abraham and Glenn, or Daryl and Glenn? I mean, I don't think they'll do that, because I don't think they want to blow all their characters out in one shot. I think that one character death is sufficient for the season finale. But I don't know. I'm starting to think that it's not Abraham. And if you would have asked me 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have said there's no way Abraham makes it past the season finale. So, and sorry, I do not speak enough Spanish to have a conversation. I can ask where the bathroom is. So we'll be sticking with English for now. Maggie's suddenly not having a crisis. I don't know what that means. Okay. So let's roll it back. Let's roll it back. Because the answer is, the question is, who died? And the answer is, we don't know, right? I know there was some leaked audio that came out that implies it might be a specific character. And I'm sorry, I missed your name. Just faded out. Kirkman said there are hints as to who died. If I were going to guess, if I were personally going to bet without any extra knowledge that the rest of you don't have, I would say Glenn, but that doesn't mean anything. Someone to the left of Rick. And I saw somebody had pointed out, since we see the first person perspective of the person who's getting their head bashed in, and there's no hair in the eyes, well, then it's not Carl. And also, it looks like who's watching has 2 eyes. Otherwise, it would have been like half the screen. So pretty sure Carl's okay. And another thing that's worth pointing out is, throughout the episode, they kept showing this first person, like it's really dark. There's a couple like pinholes of light. So they keep going back to this. And we find out at the end that it's one of the captives. It's one of the people that the Saviors already have, that Dwight and his crew captured. And so it implies, if they're going to do that, if they're going to show this first person throughout the episode, they're building it up so that whenever we see through the eyes of the person dying, it's probably the same person. So if it's a character like Abraham, or Carl, or Rick, or any of these guys who were in the RV, or Maggie, it's less likely that it was them that met Lucille. So I'm going to say that probably one of the characters that had already been captured, which is Glenn, Daryl, Michonne, Rosita. I think it's one of those 4. And I think that it's Glenn. Could have been Daryl, but I think it's Glenn. That was Daryl. He was weak from the gunshot. I don't think that makes a difference, because all of them were weak at that point. Any of them could have gone. So I just, quick question: who is angry about the way they ended this? Who is angry about this ending? Because I for a long time, there you go, pissed, HG science nerd. Used to be great, but I see raising your hand. Mary Ann Pine thought it was awesome. Abraham has died 100% sure. Do you see these caps? I also see the 3 question marks. Yes, Norman Reedus is making movies now, but he's already made 3 movies while the show was on, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, so I've been saying for weeks that we all knew that they had announced, basically, that this season would end on a cliffhanger. And we also knew that Negan was going to kill somebody, as he did in the comics. Because if he didn't make that, that's a big part of his introduction. We knew Negan was being introduced, and his introduction is killing somebody. So if he wouldn't have killed somebody in the season finale, it really wouldn't have been Negan's introduction. So we knew these two things. Cliffhanger, somebody's going to die. So I've been saying for weeks, I just hope that the cliffhanger isn't not showing us who died. I can live with somebody dying. I've been saying for weeks, I can't live with them doing that to us and just not revealing it until October. And that is precisely what they did. And it's very frustrating because I thought they would have learned their lesson whenever they kept us hanging over Glenn in the dumpster for 4 weeks. But they didn't. So now not only do we have to wait 4 weeks, but we have to wait, 4 weeks and 6 more months. So I'm very frustrated at the way they did this. And a lot of people, this has been very controversial. On The Talking Dead, they really defended this. And they said, cliffhangers are great. Cliffhangers are great TV. Yeah, that make us keep watching. Here's my thing. There are good cliffhangers and there are bad cliffhangers, right? I think that several seasons ago, whenever the season finale was that they got captured and put into the boxcar at Terminus, that was a good season finale, right? Because we know they're going to get out, or at least most of them are going to get out, and we just don't know how. But we know where they are, and there's not a big dangling question mark. So the Terminus season finale in the boxcar, that was a good season finale. But I think the fact that they basically showed us a season finale minus 1 minute, I don't think that's good. That's not a good cliffhanger. So stop and tell us your life story. My life story is I've been watching The Walking Dead for 6 years, and I'm not sure how I can continue. So they have the ratings. They don't need to do this. You're correct. And they made us think Eugene is dead by showing the bullet paper. That is also a good point. So, sorry, there are a lot of messages to try to keep up with. So, I don't think that this was a wise move on the part of The Walking Dead, because I feel like they showed us a season finale and then cut off the last minute. And it's like, even if they had showed us who died, there's still, we're still on a cliffhanger because we're still wondering what's going to happen next. How are they going to bounce back from this? Like, what is the fallout from whoever dying death? And so I feel like we would have had a season finale with a cliffhanger if they had revealed it. So I don't agree with this particular creative choice that they made. And the other thing is, so when they come back, season 7's premiere, what are they going to do? Are they going to show us who died in the first 2 minutes and then fast forward, or what? Because the Terminus season finale in a cliffhanger, they're in a boxcar, and so the whole season premiere afterwards is, how do we get out of this boxcar? How do we escape? That's a whole episode. What was left out of this episode is not a whole episode. It's just somebody's dead body and the way they died. So, anyway, I'm not in favor of this, but they've been trying to justify it with the whole cliffhanger excuse. Who is Lucille? So, Tim, for those of us who are not familiar with Lucille, Lucille is the name of Negan's barbed wire baseball bat. So, colorfully named. Lucille is a vampire bat. She craves blood. So, what did you think of Negan? What did you think of Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan? Because I feel like now we're all talking about who died, and we're either angry or whatever about that, but I think it distracts from Negan. Like, yeah, he's good. I love him. He was perfect. Excellent. So he's a good actor. Jeffrey Dean Morgan's fantastic. He hated Abraham's stash. That is true. There's a little bit of stash envy, perhaps. So I think that if they had showed us who died, we would be upset about a main character dying. But I think we'd be talking more about how awesome Negan is. Whether you love him or you love to hate him, he is the villain that The Walking Dead desperately needs. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan seems to be playing him to perfection. Obviously, I want to see more with him, but we got a good introduction. He's almost likable, except he's terrible. He'd have a great future in American politics. Negan will not kill a woman. Maybe this Negan will. We don't know that for sure. He did not seem to be discriminating the way that he talked to them. So I feel bad for Jeffrey. I don't feel bad for Jeffrey Dean Morgan because he's playing Negan, and that's amazing. But I feel bad that we're not giving him enough credit because it's totally overshadowed by this this cutting to first person and this question mark. So I saw someone ask, "Can we please talk about Daryl?" What do you want to say about Daryl? Because I think that we've heard for many seasons, if Daryl dies, we riot. So I'm not sure if we'll be rioting in October, but I personally think Daryl's okay, and I'll tell you why. I've said this on every Periscope so far because the question of will Daryl die always comes up. Exactly. David Doggs answered it for me. Daryl's fine. He brings in too much money, right? Okay, so you walk into a comic book store or a toy store or whatever, you see Walking Dead action figures. You don't have any of them in your collection. Which one do you buy? Which one Walking Dead action figure do you buy? You buy Daryl, right? Because he's the coolest. He has the crossbow, he's got the vest with the wings, he's Norman Reedus, he might come with a motorcycle. Daryl sells action figures. Daryl sells merchandise. And so Norman Reedus is safe as Daryl as long as Norman Reedus wants to be on the show. He's got a new show coming out with him on motorcycles. It's a reality show. Like, he can work that with his schedule. It's on AMC. So I'm not worried about Daryl. Rosanna, you hate Carol. What did you guys think about the whole Carol and Morgan side adventure? Because I feel like this was a 90-minute season finale, and I think that the extra 30 minutes must have been Morgan and Carol. I think a lot of people, we're losing some Carol love. I think a lot of people are not as enthused about Carol lately. I don't like the way they've been changing her character. Did you like the fact that Morgan finally killed someone? Morgan finally picked up that gun and used it? Morgan will fix her psyche. David Doggs. I think they're going to meet in the middle. I missed it. I think somebody was asking who they met. Somebody says going to the kingdom. So I don't want to reveal too much about what happens in the comic books because it looks like we're clearly going there. But the people that Morgan and Carol meet, they're a separate group. You know, they're wearing like the motocross gear, it looks like. They are not a bunch of motocross guys. They are a separate group. And if you read the comics, you know who they are. And so there are more people out there, and we're going to find that maybe our guys are now in a bad position, and the saviors, have they basically castrated Rick. Mr. Overconfidence thinks, well, we can take care of the savior problem for you, Hilltop, no problem. Well, that didn't work out too well for Rick. But there are other groups out there, so when the season 6 mid-season premiere came out, they were announcing it's a bigger world, right? And I think that Jesus, in an earlier episode, mentioned that. Like, your world's about to get a whole lot bigger. That's exactly what's happening. That's what Morgan and Carol are setting up. They are meeting another group, and if this group knows Negan, well, basically Negan and the Saviors have the same reputation everywhere. So eventually, if Negan has so many guys, there's going to be so many other groups they can team up. So I think that's what we're building towards. Do the other groups help fight Negan? That's what I think is going to happen. And we know some from the comic books, but I don't want to say too much more about that. Just be prepared, because this other group should be really cool and really change things up. So, who died? Who died? Who died? I keep seeing that. We know we all know the same amount of information here, and I'll say that I think it was Glenn, but I don't know. Character who died was Carl. I don't think it was Carl. Sorry, I don't speak Russian. Is Rick going to become kind of irrelevant? That's a good question. I don't think that Rick will become irrelevant, but I think that You know, Maggie says to Rick at one point, she's like, I trust you. Like, everybody's put their faith into Rick, and he's really failed them. Because I think Negan didn't kill anyone, he just killed a possum or something. Wouldn't that be a twist? If after 7 months we come back from The Walking Dead and they cut to, we had been looking through the eyes of a possum that snuck up on the group. I would not put anything past The Walking Dead writers. Negan killed the cameraman. No, it's like whenever they did the Glenn dumpster thing, he beat a dumpster. Maybe they beat a dead horse. When they did the Glenn dumpster thing and people were so angry about it, the producers, Scott Gimple, Robert Kirkman, all these guys, they came out and they said, but we just want you to feel like the characters feel. We want you to wonder if Glenn's alive the same way that Maggie's wondering if Glenn's alive, right? So they put this scene with this person being beaten to death, they put us in this person's head. So we're looking through their eyes to make us feel this way. Except the difference is if we're that person, it's all over in a minute. And we're not that person. We're sitting around until October waiting for a resolution. It's like it was a 90-minute episode and they needed 91 minutes to show us what actually happens. Sammy suggests that Maggie will die with the baby. I've been saying for a long time, I don't think that Maggie will deliver the baby because babies are difficult for TV production. And they already have Judith, which has been a real pain. And my understanding is they've cycled through 18 babies and toddlers playing Judith. I don't know if that number's true, but it sounds like it could be accurate because Judith is like a different baby every single time we see her. So I don't think Maggie's going to have her baby, but I don't know that that means that she dies. She could survive, but I really don't see her having this kid. I missed the thing about Rick and Michonne. Sorry, if you want to repeat that. What if the baby is a walker? Well, if the baby is a walker, at least it doesn't have teeth, so I think she's still safe. You hope it's Abraham that died. Why do you hope it's Abraham? Because I think that for the story's perspective, Abraham dying at this point makes sense. He should have technically died a couple episodes ago, and that's what they were really building up towards, but faking us out. But man, I do not want to continue the show without the Abraham one-liners. They are the best quotes in the entire series. It's Glenn. I need Abraham to live. Okay. I saw the Michonne comment. I'm going to find it here because I saw you wrote it twice. Trying to find it. Lost it again. The messages go by too fast. Dolphin smooth and bitch nuts. You really know how to bite a dick. Yeah, mother. I think that Abraham, it would be a real tragedy if we lost him and his poetry. Whoever was hit tried to stay upright. I think, well, that's a good point towards Abraham. Like, he was, like, ready to go, like, you don't like my mustache? We'll do something about it. But also, I think that Maggie will never have the baby. Correct, I think that's right. Michonne gets it to see Rick evolve to all-out war with Negan. That's a good point, Michael. And thank you. I saw you. I think that you wrote that several times and I missed it. So what if, like, okay, Rick already feels like he's let everyone down. He's got this look in his eye like he's defeated, right? We have not seen this look in Rick's face for a long time. And so he knows he can't do anything. He wants to jump up and he wants to kill Negan. The way that he ripped that guy's throat out, the claimers, remember that? But he can't do anything because he knows anything he does will just get more people killed. So if you want to really add insult to injury, if Michonne had been the one that was killed, or Carl, I think Rick actually would have lost it, especially if Carl had been the one that died. I don't think there would have been anything holding him back. But yeah, the all-out war storyline is what we're moving towards, where the world of The Walking Dead, it's just group versus group. Hello to our friends in Argentina. Yeah, his face, Rick's face said everything. Negan says the one who's taking the beating, you're taking a beating like a champ. Seems to be a man. That's a good point. That's from the comic books. That's what he says. So that was faithful. They seem scared nowadays to kill a major character. It's like they're untouchable. I agree. This show, they've been saying for so long, well, anyone could die at any time. But they continue to prove that that is not the case. Particularly with Glenn and the whole dumpster dive thing, where they could have killed him. In our minds, they killed him for 4 weeks, and then they brought him back to life. So even though they say they can kill anyone at any time, you know there's certain characters who are going to be safe. Daryl's merchandise. Rick is the center of the show. Like, if he dies, technically the show could continue, but it's going to be a whole different show. And that's going to be shaky, potentially, for the ratings. If Daryl dies, we riot. They know this. We've been loud and clear. There are coffee mugs that say this. You do not argue with a coffee mug. But I think that Glenn could die. And I think that if Glenn died, people would be upset. But I don't think the riot would be as big. I think that mentally, I think that most of us mentally are ready to let Glenn go. I also don't think that Michonne will die because her storyline with Rick has finally happened. It doesn't feel like they're going to cut it off this quickly. I also think that Michonne, like Daryl, she does move merchandise. Her action figure's pretty cool. So I think they're going to keep her around. And I think that if Eugene or Rosita or one of these characters of that tier were killed, I don't think that it would be... I don't think it would be meaningful enough. I don't think it would make Negan enough of a villain. So I think it's going to be Glenn. I think Glenn is the top tier character that they can afford to kill off, and people will keep watching. But Glenn's a great character, so it's a shame, but that makes for good storytelling. Do I believe the comics are coming to life? I think they've done a very good job of recreating the comic books, certain scenes from the comic books. They've done a really great job of giving us those moments. And I think last night with Negan's introduction was one of those, except it would have been far more powerful if they had actually showed us who was killed. I think we would all have a much better, I think we'd have a better chance of tuning in for the premiere if they had revealed it, because I think they've angered people so many times over and over again that maybe, I don't know. People always say if Daryl dies, I'm not watching anymore, or if Rick dies, I'm not watching anymore, or if Carl or anyone dies, I'm not going to watch anymore. But I don't think that's the thing. I don't think that's the real danger. I think they can kill a lot of characters, and even though we say we won't watch anymore, we actually will. I think the time that we stop watching is whenever they just mess with the audience too many times, and they pull these stunts. This cliffhanger is a good example of something that just angers us, right? And it's not like we're angry because we're going to miss a character. It's angry because of the pacing of the show. They gave us 90 minutes, and they built to something that they didn't deliver. And then they tell us we have to wait until October. So that is the reason I think that people would start to tune away from The Walking Dead. So I think we'll still come back, but I think maybe some people won't. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if we're still into The Walking Dead in October, and I think a lot of us will be, but maybe some of us won't. So someone keeps mentioning, I think Aaron you're talking about. I think Aaron's safe. So, Abraham is protecting Alexandria. Sorry, I'm not sure. Missed some of the messages. If you quit watching because a character dies, you're not a real fan. I think that's kind of my point. I'm saying it in a roundabout way. And people say this with Game of Thrones too. If so-and-so dies, I'm not watching it anymore. I would really love to know, maybe The Walking Dead isn't the show for this question, because obviously if you are watching this, you probably watched the finale last night, so you're still watching The Walking Dead. But has anyone actually stopped watching a show, such as Game of Thrones, because they killed off a character that you liked? Everyone always says they will, but has anyone actually done it? I see a lot of no's. I think we like to threaten it. I don't think anyone actually does it. I think that sometimes if people stopped watching a show out of boredom, they might claim it's because they killed their favorite character. And maybe that contributed to the boredom. So, yeah, how can you stop watching a show because someone dies? That means you're just watching it for him or her. And that could be the case, but I don't think that anybody is watching The Walking Dead for only one character. It just doesn't seem, it's not that kind of show. Because if you use Daryl as an example, Daryl has barely been in this season. And so if you're watching a whole season, 16 episodes, for maybe 2 episodes that feature Daryl heavily, then you would have left already. It just doesn't make sense. It's an ensemble show, so it's not about one character. And in Game of Thrones, everybody freaking dies. Yeah, I think Game of Thrones is actually... People compare The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones because they both kill off characters, but Game of Thrones is a far worse offender. And whenever they threaten to kill a character, I actually believe them. I don't believe The Walking Dead anymore. They've faked us out. Why 90 minutes? For 30 minutes more, I missed that, but I think that's a good point. So this was a 90-minute episode. Do you remember what the last 90-minute episode was? It was the episode after the Glenn, it looks like he dies, the dumpster dive, the episode called Thank You. It was the episode that was all about Morgan's flashback. Yep, Morgan. So after Glenn fell off the dumpster and it looks like he's died, they say, next week it's going to be 90 minutes. And we're like, wow, we just saw this amazing thing and it looks like Glenn died and they're going to give us 90 minutes next week. And then it was 90 minutes of Morgan in a cage with a goat. Why did we need an extra 30 minutes of that? And so I'm starting to think that whenever there's a 90-minute episode of The Walking Dead announced, it's not a good thing because it feels like they stretch things out. I think that last night's episode was a little slow, and I think it's because it was 90 minutes. If it were 60 minutes, I think it would have been a better episode. Who do I like most from The Walking Dead? I usually say Carol, but I don't like what they're doing with her characters, or her character in this season. Have I read the comics? I've read some of the comics. I read up to the prison, but I haven't read past that, but I've heard a lot about what happens after that. I liked the goat too. Morgan is an animal person. You go along with the goat. He's got that horse. I think he's giving the horse over to the new friends. Hello to our friends in Turkey. Yeah, thank you for agreeing with the 90-minute thing. It's like there's certain episodes where they cram so much in. Like if you watch the season 6, the first 3 episodes, like the whole thing with the quarry, and they're coming up with this plan to divert the walkers so they don't find Alexandria, those are the episodes that could be 90 minutes because they felt so rushed. They did so much in those episodes. But then they have Morgan and Eastman and the goat, and think about it. There's 3 characters, and they each get 30 minutes. The goat gets equal time. The goat gets 30 minutes, just like everyone else. So I don't think the producers know what to do with the extra time, which is unfortunate because I think that they could use it wisely and they could give us some really amazing episodes. Too many commercials. That is exactly what they do with the extra time. They put it into commercials. They run more high-priced commercial spots. Who's the spy in Alexandria? Do we know that there's a spy in Alexandria? I don't think that's necessarily the case. I just came back from the last episode. I have one thing to say. WTF. Pretty much. I think that's what we all thought. Sorry, I saw about wishing there was a schedule for the scope. I try to do these on Mondays after the show so we can all talk about it, but since we're now on a break until October, I may or may not continue to do these on Mondays. I will announce, if you go to, on Twitter, Essential Dead, at Essential Dead, I will announce Periscopes before. So please join. So let's see, were there any other major developments? There's one thing that's really been bothering me. My Bright Love says, did anyone notice there were no women in the Saviors? I didn't see any women last night, but if you remember, the group that captured Maggie and Carol several episodes ago, they were almost all women. There was a guy or two there. So the Saviors do have women in their group. They're an equal opportunity employer, and so there are women. Although I don't think we saw any last night. They all look like a bunch of like big burly biker dudes last night. So yes, they're probably just indoors, the women. So they have their elite strike force, their girl group, and Carol and Maggie killed them all. When does Fear the Walking Dead start? Is Fear the Walking Dead on this Sunday coming up? I think it is. Does anyone know for sure? I could check the schedule, but it's hard for me to do that. I see a lot of yeses. So 10th of April. So Fear the Walking Dead is coming up. Are you excited about Fear the Walking Dead? Is everyone amped up for it? Because I think the previews have looked really, really good. And I like that they're going out. I like that it's on the water. I like that they're giving us something different. So they'll be on a boat. Yep. So my problem with Fear the Walking Dead Season 1 is that it was only 6 episodes, but I felt like there were still filler episodes. And when your season is only 6 episodes long and you've got filler, that's just inexcusable. That's just bad pacing. So I think that even though a lot of people complained about it, I think that that's probably the reason that a lot of us didn't love Fear the Walking Dead, because it took too long to finally get somewhere. I think it could have been like a 2-hour special, like a 2-hour movie, and I think it would have been sufficient. Actually, AMC just put out a recap. If you haven't watched Fear the Walking Dead, this is good. AMC put out a recap. It's 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and it sums up everything important that happens in Fear the Walking Dead Season 1, which says volumes. The fact that they can cram everything of importance into 3.5 minutes shows you exactly how much of importance happened in those 6 episodes. So, anyway, watch your 3.5 minutes, get caught up on Fear the Walking Dead, and next season, starting on Sunday apparently, they're on a boat. So I'm kind of excited to see the Walking Dead universe venture into new territory. And so that's good. I'm excited about it. I'm more excited about Game of Thrones, but that's a different discussion. All right, yeah, and they've been showing the shorts between Walking Dead commercial breaks. They've been showing the 1-minute bursts of the airplane story, and a character from that will be showing up in Fear the Walking Dead Season 2. Yeah, so Glenn, if you read the comics, I think I can reveal this now, or whether you read them or not, I think it's public knowledge that Glenn is the one who meets Lucille. So I think it's Glenn that died. I think it was. I know as much as you guys know, but I think Glenn's the one that bites it. And I don't think they're going to veer off from the comics in that regard. Hello, Negan. You bet it's the teenager on the plane that survived. It's either the teenager or the woman that's like holding hands with him. Jon Snow comes back. We'll talk about that another time. I think I'm going to do a Game of Thrones Periscope, maybe as soon as next week. So we'll talk about Game of Thrones there. Okay, we're all Negan. We are all Negan. We're all maniacs. So I'm just looking at my notes to see if there's anything else. The whistling was cool and creepy. I don't play the Walking Dead game by Telltale, but I've heard it's very good. In the comics, yes, that was Abraham's death in the comics. So they faked us out. That was good. I give the Walking Dead show people bonus points for faking us out on Abraham dying and then keeping him alive, which now makes him an X Factor. So I don't want to reveal Game of Thrones spoilers, like the governor whistling. So I miss the governor, I do, but I'm really excited that Negan is stepping up, because I feel like the governor, as much as I love the governor as a character, I never felt like he was evil enough. I never felt like he was dangerous enough. And so Negan seems like everything great about the governor except much more dangerous and with two eyes. Two eyes and a baseball bat. So I'm really excited about that. I think that Negan is kind of a do-over for the governor, because when they introduced him, they didn't introduce him in a way that made him feel really, really, really bad. Don't spoil The Walking Dead. Well, I'm sorry, you are in the wrong Periscope if you don't want to hear about the season finale of The Walking Dead. So you should jump out, because that's what we're all talking about. Okay. Do you think Negan may hook up with a female from our group? Who would be the lucky female? Who's going to pair up with Negan? I don't think that's going to happen. Talk about Romeo and Juliet. Negan would make the governor pee himself. Yes, I think he would. The show needed a new bad after the governor died. I agree 100%. I feel like since the whole Woodbury storyline ended, this show has really been spinning its wheels, and they got to Alexandria, they got set up there, there's some drama trying to fit in, but I feel like the show, thank you, Tim, I appreciate that. I feel like the show has really needed a strong opposition, right? And it's not just like Rick trying to get along with Deanna and Rick not trusting the Alexandrians. Like, that's not enough. We need Negan in this show. We need a strong villain to make us want to tune in, right? So Dwight, the character that stole Daryl's crossbow, I've been saying this for several weeks. I love that Daryl has an arch nemesis now, because Daryl has totally lost his path. What purpose has Daryl served for like the last season? He hasn't done much. Basically, since Terminus, Daryl has been like in the background, but now Daryl has an arch nemesis. He has Dwight, and they can beat each other up and pass the crossbow back and forth and whatever, steal each other's motorcycles. And I'm excited about. I think that Daryl is still alive, but I think that he's going to stay alive because the Dwight and Daryl thing is fantastic. And someone mentioned that Dwight is Daryl from the comics. Dwight is, in the comic books, he's a character who had a crossbow, and Daryl doesn't exist in the comics. And so when they introduced Dwight in the TV show, they did something really cool, because Dwight actually steals Daryl's crossbow, and that's how he ends up with the crossbow. And it's a great little twist for people that are comic book fans, because obviously only one character can have a trademark crossbow as a weapon. Speaking of weapons and Daryl, did they run out of rockets? Am I the only one that every single time that RV pulled up to a roadblock, I was just waiting for like Eugene to pop out of the top with a rocket launcher? Anyone to pop out of the top with a rocket launcher? Like, did they forget? Either they forgot very quickly how effective rocket launchers are at destroying saviors on the road, or they simply ran out of rockets. And yeah, rockets are hard to find in this world, so that's probably the case. But if not, it's just lazy writing. And if you recall, Daryl, whenever he came back to help save Alexandria, and they poured all the fuel into the lake, he uses a rocket to set the lake on fire to draw all of the walkers to it. But the whole time I'm thinking, yo, rockets are something you want to hold on to. Use a lighter. Like, it will still start a fire. You can use a lighter. I know it makes you look really cool if you're standing on top of the truck shooting a rocket, but you're probably going to want that for the season finale. And yes, they could have used that, especially that last roadblock that looked like, I don't know how many guys, 70 guys? It was a lot of guys. The rocket was the best. I love the rocket scene. And yeah, okay, you're cool shooting a rocket launcher, but you'd be cool if you just like lit a cigarette with a Zippo and then you tossed it and the lake goes up. That would have been cool too, Daryl. Cool enough for me. And you don't have to prove anything. We know you're cool. I'm not technically representing Brooklyn because I'm in Manhattan. It always comes up as Brooklyn for some reason. Poor Enid. She's still locked in a closet. Yeah, that's the big cliffhanger nobody's talking about. Will Enid get out of that closet? I don't know. Spoiler alert, everyone died. Spoiler alert, Rick woke up and it was all a dream while he was in a coma. And he's just hanging out with Shane and Lori, and it's all good. Okay, Negan killed Eugene. He could have. The fact that Eugene handed over the bullet recipe and basically said his goodbyes, he could have. But I don't think that they killed Eugene, because as much as I personally am a Eugene fan, I know he's divisive. A lot of people hate Eugene. I really don't think that him dying would have made enough of an impact. So, anyway, let's see. I'm just looking to see if there's any other important notes, because I think we pretty much covered everything. The cliffhanger, I think most people are angry about it. Some people thought it was awesome. Fair enough. Rick got a taste of his own medicine. And I think it was Glenn that died, but I don't know for sure. Waiting for Walking Dead the musical. That would do really, really well, actually. And then it ends on a cliffhanger, and you have to buy another $180 ticket to see the end. Direct me to Times Square from here. Sorry, I don't think I can get into that right now. The new people that Morgan meet, I don't want to talk too much about them because I think it's a little too spoilery, but we know from the comic books that there are other groups, and this is clearly a group that we haven't met yet. And so there's the Hilltop, there's Alexandria, there's the Saviors, and there's at least one more group. So if you joined, if you just joined, we talked about that before. So I think that pretty much does it for everything. The paw prints. I think that was the hoof of the horse. I think that was horse prints. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'm actually going to hop on YouNow. And YouNow is a whole other audience. And on YouNow, it's like Periscope, except that if you wanted to talk, I could actually split the screen with you and I could share you in and everyone could see you. So I'm going to hop on YouNow next, and I will tweet out the link so you can follow @EssentialDead or @Essential_TV, and you can grab all of our Periscope streams, our YouNow streams. YouNow, you can watch it through a web browser. You don't need the app. So if you're on a computer, you can just go to YouNow, and the account is Essential TV. And so I hope that some of you will join me on YouNow. But if you've been watching for the last however long this has been, I've lost track. Then you're a real trooper if you come and join me on YouNow. And I'm going to have to get a drink because I'm losing my voice. So anyway, thank you very much. I think I'm going to do a Periscope on Game of Thrones. I don't know if I'll do a Fear the Walking Dead. You don't need the app for YouNow. You can view it through the web. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who came back again. And, the season's over, but we can keep talking about it. And I think that I think they're counting on that. I think that's why they didn't show who died. But I don't want to get hung up on that. There's so many other things to talk about. And we can talk about Fear the Walking Dead. And we can talk about, I really want to talk about all the Walking Dead what-ifs. Because there's a lot of things that almost happened in the show that ended up being changed. Carol was supposed to be killed in season 3 instead of T-Dog, and people who were almost cast to play Rick instead of Andrew Lincoln, and the fact that Norman Reedus auditioned for the role of Merle, and they knew Michael Rooker was going to be Merle, but they loved Norman Reedus so much that they created the Carol of Daryl. They created the character of Daryl. So there's a lot to talk about in The Walking Dead, even without having new episodes. So join me on YouNow in 10 minutes, and follow Essential Dead on Twitter, and follow Essential_TV on Twitter. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you before October, and we'll see Negan then too.